Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Income is the Outcome with Tim Whisler, where we believe it's not how much you earn, it's how much you get to keep. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio is Tim Whisler. He is the president and founder of the Whisler Agency, based right here in Central Illinois. Tim, my friend, I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Kristen. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, for sure. Well, I know that you are very busy. You are constantly meeting with folks. You have your podcast called License to Spend. You also have your brand new book by the same title. We're going to talk a little bit more about that today. But I recognize a lot of our viewers may be newer to you, newer to the Whisler Agency. So I would love to start off today by having you share a little bit more about your story. How did all of this come to be?
Absolutely. You know, when I was growing up, deep down, I always kind of wanted to be some type of a business owner. I just didn't know what capacity. And so I went ahead and dabbled into corporate America for a little while and was kind of climbing that corporate ladder. But then when the year 2000 happened, life changed. We went from a very, very wonderful moment of the birth of our firstborn, Cameron, in February, and then I watched my mother take her last breath and pass away into eternity in June of 2000 at 52 years of age.
Wow.
And that was a very, very, obviously, one end of the spectrum to the other in a very short amount of time. And so I realized at that moment that, you know, life is extremely fragile, it's very precious. And so it got me thinking again about what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to just make a living, I wanted to make a difference. And as I started to think about, you know, looking at this industry where I could serve people, it really became evident that this is where I need to be when I saw what my father went through with some advice of a financial advisor.
Yeah, so tell me what happened with that.
So my father was an electrician with Caterpillar in Morton, Illinois. And so, I mean, he's incredibly brilliant at what he did. And at the advice of his CPA, he took some dollars and went to an A.G. Edwards advisor. Right? They're no longer in existence. It's now, I think, Wells Fargo. Anyway, this gentleman, unfortunately, kind of took advantage of my father's, as most people, it's kind of a foreign language to people. And when I saw some statements that my dad had, it really became evident that this gentleman was taking advantage of my dad by buying and selling different transactions that was costing my father fees. Kristen, that was the moment that I decided this is what I'm going to do.
Wow.
So, you know, we're still going through the new life changes of dealing with mom's loss, but then I started earning my licenses in evenings and weekends. So I'm still working full-time in corporate America, still trying to build this practice, and then we're so blessed to say that in March of 2004, we made the jump. It was a matter of just saying, okay, if we're going to do this, this is now the time. And by that time, Cade was now born, so now we've got our family of four was established, and we made the jump, and I'm so blessed to say that we've been doing this now since 2004.
So 20 years in the making,
20 years.
and
Yes,
here
ma'am.
we are.
Here we
Wow. And I love, because I know that you've been able to help hundreds of folks successfully navigate to and through their retirement, and I'm just excited for more people to get to connect with you as a result of this television show as well.
Thank you. We do too. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get our message out to tell people, say, look, you know, when you're getting ready to retire, you're getting ready to embark on a journey you've never walked before. So therefore, it's kind of somewhat of it's kind of an intimidating thing for people.
Right.
And it should be, right? Because we've not done this before. So, you know, we don't have to have fear of the unknown. Let's just make sure that we have access to somebody who can provide resources and maybe a roadmap, if you will, to successfully navigate that new journey.
Well, what I'm excited about too in our conversation today is it really hits home with your story. I think so many folks unfortunately can relate to this stress of, I know I need to work with a financial professional, but how do I know who I can trust? How do I trust that this person isn't going to take advantage of me and is going to have my best interests at heart? I love that, unfortunately, because of what your dad went through though, but what an inspiration that you now get to do it differently in this industry.
That's exactly right. I mean, because it's every conversation that I have, I always reflect back upon what must my father have been thinking when he was going through something, and then discover what happened to him.
Right.
And so that's what's always in the back of our mind. When we meet with folks, we're going to sit down with them. We're going to go through a very, very comfortable, casual conversation of just simply asking them questions, getting to know them. They can get to know us, so that ultimately they can walk out of that office at some point down the road with a customized financial plan that makes sense to them. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do with every household that we get a chance to meet with.
Absolutely. Well, if we had to give a title for today's show, it would be called Different by Design. Of course, you've just gotten to hear a little piece of Tim's story and really the inspiration for how the Whisler Agency was created. What I would love to do, Tim, is just share some more things about what makes you and the team of Whisler Agency so different in this space. So let's get to it, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, one of the things is I know that you're independent.
Yes, ma'am.
Talk about why that's such an important distinction in our industry today.
You know, when I first started my practice, I was held in the captive world. Right? So when I started my practice, I was with one firm, and that's okay. I'm not knocking it. It was a good start.
A lot of people start out that way.
Exactly right. But I soon realized that, you know what, you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. In other words, one company can't be the answer for everything. So after just a couple of years of being with them, I decided, you know what, if I'm going to stay in this space, and I wanted to be there, that I need to be independent. That way then, as an independent advisor, when I'm sitting down with folks and we're trying to solve those different concerns, I have the opportunity to go out and find the best of the breeds of the different companies that I can work with and go find that solution for a client. So being an independent, holistic advisor, I think is very empowering to allow us to make sure that we're checking off all the boxes, not just their concerns, but also looking at things from the big picture, making sure that's a holistic approach. And again, we get to use the best of the breeds from all kinds of different companies that we work with.
Right, so in other words, you're not beholden to any one certain type of product, or you know, if you work for one of those big box brokerage firms, you can only sell the products that they offer. And if everything looks like a hammer, then, or everything looks like a nail, you're only going to sell a hammer, right? Is
That's
the
exactly
expression.
Right. Yep, that's right. Yep.
Whereas you're able to go out and find out, okay, let's see what is the best option, and the world is your oyster, really.
That's exactly right. And I don't answer to sales managers. I don't have sales contests going on all the time. I don't have quotas. I don't answer to a company with a board of directors. I answer to my clients. And that's a very, very empowering position to be, because now when I'm sitting down with Mr. and Mrs. Smith and they're expressing concerns about taxes or market volatility, wherever the case is, now when they come back, when I can sit back down with them and provide them a written, customized plan, they now know I'm able to bring in different elements from different companies and provide them with that solution.
Right, so being independent, of course, a huge distinction in this industry. Another word we need to talk about is what it means to be a fiduciary. You know, I hear that word more and more these days, but let's break it down. What does that actually mean for folks?
You remember back in the day we had that golden rule? We were taught the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, right? Yes. What a concept, what a way to live life. Well, in the financial services industry, that's basically what the fiduciary is supposed to do. The fiduciary responsibility is therefore, you are supposed to provide a recommendation that serves the client's best interest, not the best interest of the advisor. And we have to be very careful with who we listen to as they define that, because there's a lot of people out there who have very loud voices in social media, TV, radio, whatever the case may be, and they declare themselves to be a fiduciary, but they also kind of knock other types of products or solutions. We have to be very careful because we want to make sure that a fiduciary provides unbiased information that, again, puts the client's interest ahead of their own. Yes. That is truly the role that the fiduciary is supposed to fulfill when serving clients.
Absolutely. It's that legal and ethical obligation to always serve your client's best interests. You have to be licensed as a fiduciary. That is not an easy task.
No, ma'am, it's not.
Right? You and I have both been through that process,
yes,
so we know. But you said it best a few minutes ago when you said that you work for the client, no one else. And that is a beautiful thing. I know that you really thrive on doing that for folks.
Yes, it's a wonderful thing. I tell you, I think my Mondays are better than most people's weekends.
Wow.
Because of the fact of when I have the ability to sit down with somebody, build a relationship with them, and then all of a sudden now you hear them say thank you, or we feel so much better. I mean, Kristen, that's what it's all about. I mean, this is what we're doing. We're trying to help people solve something that maybe they weren't able to do on their own.
Right.
And if we can partner with them, walk down that journey of retirement with them, and it just doesn't get any better than that. It's a wonderful feeling.
It's so rewarding for
Yes,
sure.
ma'am.
Well, I know a lot of our viewers are probably excited to be able to reach out and connect with you, and you are offering them the opportunity to come in and meet with you to receive their very own complimentary written financial plan. Talk a little bit about what that is and what folks can expect.
Sure, absolutely. So basically, you can reach out to us. You can call the number there on your screen. If you're in Central Illinois, you may hear our radio ads occasionally pop up, or maybe you've checked out our podcast on our website. Just simply reach out to us, and we'll schedule what's called a Get Acquainted conversation. It's basically a discovery conversation where we're simply going to learn about what it is that you're concerned with, maybe what it is you're trying to solve, and then looking at your financial statements and all the different policies that you have, and then trying to understand, from my standpoint, trying to understand timeline, time frame. What's your philosophy of money? What is your legacy plan? What do you want to do for the kids? So therefore, we can put together a customized written financial plan and, again, provide you not only with the roadmap to go down this journey all by yourself, but also with a guide. So you're not going down this journey all by yourself. You actually have the roadmap to follow down this path with us right there by your side. So, take advantage of this opportunity. We'd love to meet you and love to see what we can do for you.
Wonderful. Tim, thank you so much. And I'm excited to continue this important conversation with you. To our viewers at home, to claim your complimentary written financial plan from Tim and the team of the Whisler Agency, it's really simple. All you need to do is call that number on the bottom of your screen, 888-992-7872. Or if you'd rather connect online, we've got you covered. If you simply pull out your smartphone, you can open up the camera app, just point, click, and scan that QR code that you see there down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the Whisler Agency will reach out to connect with you to schedule your complimentary meeting that way as well. We'll be back with more on Income is the Outcome with Tim Whisler right after this.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to Income is the Outcome with Tim Whisler. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and Tim and I are having a very important conversation today all about what makes the Whisler Agency so different in this financial services space. We know that a lot of you out there know that you want to be working with a financial professional. You want some help when it comes to your retirement planning, but you may not know where to turn, what kinds of questions to ask, what things you should be looking for in the type of advisor that you need so that you can be confident they're going to serve your best interests. And so, Tim, of course, we've already talked about your story. We've talked about the importance of being independent and also being a fiduciary. I would love for you to share a little bit, too, about what makes you different in this space because you engage in comprehensive holistic financial planning. Let's talk about that because so much of our industry is only focused on the investment management piece. So what is it that you do differently for folks?
Well, when you're walking through life and you're working and earning income, you're basically walking through the first of two phases of life. You're going through the accumulation phase of life, right? So that's when we're kind of really focused on the ROI, return on investment.
Right.
Where we live is when we come down the other side of the mountain. We've put the retirement flag at the top of that mountain. We're celebrating. We're no longer working full-time. Now we're going to come down the other side of the mountain. Now we're in the distribution phase of life.
And we want to make that descent safely, right?
Yes, we want to make that, very safely. And so in order for us to be competent and resourceful for our clients, there are a lot of moving parts with that because our focus when we were building wealth was simply saving enough. Now you get into distributing your assets, turning them into income. Now you're going to be faced with taxes, market volatility, inflation, longevity. I mean, the list is pretty long. That does not mean we need to live in fear. It just simply means we need to be aware that we need to find an advisor who lives in this space and provides that comprehensive holistic plan. And one of the resources that I'm so proud to be a part of is with Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group. And Ed Slott is kind of known as the premier gentleman on being the IRA professional. In fact, if you go to his website, which is simply irahelp.com, you'll see a plethora of resources that you can have at your fingertips. So the point of it is I have the privilege of working with his team, attending 2 workshops per year, taking an exam at both workshops to maintain the status of being in that group. But that way then I'm empowered with resources that are current to keep clients abreast of what's going on, especially when it comes to tax planning.
I love that you have that distinction, because the advisors I have known who have had that designation with Ed Slott, you guys are at the top of your game. You know your stuff. You have to want to be there. You have to want to learn. The rules are always changing, and this really empowers you to stay on top of all the changes that are coming legislatively and being able to serve your clients really, at their best interest, because you know this additional important information.
Absolutely. It is so good being there. I mean, it's nearly 2 full days with a 350-page manual of nothing but IRA material.
Right.
And whenever I share this with clients, the reaction is usually like, I'm glad you're doing it so I don't have to. I'm like, that's
exactly.
fine. That's why we're doing this.
Yes.
But it is very empowering, because if I come across an advanced case, I know that I can reach out to Andy or to Ed or to Ian or to Sarah, any of the team members at Ed Slott's, and just say, look, this is kind of the case I'm working on, making sure that we're going to do the right thing for the client in their best interest, but making sure we don't mess something up when it comes to the IRS.
Right. So. And didn't you tell me something crazy where if people go to his website and they put in the zip code for your area, there's no one else who's registered with him within what kind of mile radius you said?
I believe it's like a 50-mile radius, might even be a little bit more out of the Peoria area. You can go to irahelp.com, click on Find an Advisor, because no matter where we live, we want to do this, because these advisors are specifically trained for this time of our life. And if you click on Ed Slott's website, find an advisor, type in your zip code, you can kind of see where the nearest advisor is. And right now, there's not many in my area. So I'm actually, it's kind of a shame. There should be more of us out there that's providing it. But the whole point of it is, in Central Illinois, you have access to our firm if you'd like to, reach out and engage, and we'll talk through some IRA planning.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you mentioned taxes, and I think that's another thing that I want to highlight that really sets you apart in this space, because a lot of firms out there don't even talk about tax planning with their clients. But first, why don't you describe, because there's a huge difference between engaging in tax preparation and engaging in strategic tax planning. So what is that difference, and what is it that you do for folks?
So think in terms of, take everybody back to Economics 101.
Okay.
Micro versus macro, okay? When you sit down with a tax planner, their focus is the micro, today, this year.
You mean the tax preparer,
Tax
right?
preparer, sorry.
Yes.
Tax preparer, yes. The tax preparer, the CPA, the bookkeeper.
Yep.
They're trying to lower your taxes for that current year.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that, but that's their focus. That's the tax preparer.
Yes.
The tax planner now looks at it through the different lenses. The macro, big picture. We retire at 62, 65, whatever age you're going to retire, and now we're going to estimate how many years we're going to live, and if we're taking income from tax-deferred accounts, guess who's involved? The silent partner known as the IRS.
Right.
So now when we sit down with somebody, they may not bring up their concern of paying taxes in retirement, but that's where I'm looking. I'm looking at it from a standpoint, I'm saying, look, if you've got a sizable tax-deferred account, I'm talking a 401k, 457B, 403, whatever the case is, traditional IRA, dollars that have never been taxed, you're going to have a tax bill at some point down the road. And what's somewhat unnerving about that is, the Constitution was written in ink, but the IRS uses a pencil. They'll dictate how much you get to keep whenever you start taking income from your retirement plan. So therefore, you really want to sit down with somebody who understands tax planning for retirement income.
Yeah, so true. I just heard the stat yesterday that currently there is $39.9 trillion sitting in these tax-deferred accounts. It's where the majority of Americans have the bulk of their wealth saved up. The IRS knows this, and the reality is, if you don't have a tax plan in place for yourself, guess what? The government has one, and it's not in your favor. It's going to be in their favor, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yep. So we want to be very aware of that. Again, you mentioned legislation changes. That's one of the risks that we talk about in retirement, legislative risk.
Right.
Look what just happened just 4 years ago. The Secure Act came out. And then 2 years after that, they came out with Secure Act 2.0. Changed RMDs.
Yep.
It changed the ages, but what did not get a lot of press was what happens after a non-spouse beneficiary inherits a traditional IRA.
Yes, let's talk about that real quickly, because I hear a lot of folks aren't familiar with this change, and it's a huge important thing to understand.
It's a significant change because, again, keep in mind that just because the IRA owner passes away does not mean the IRS goes away. So when you're talking dollars, I'm not talking dollars between husband and wife, right? Because they can just simply take ownership of each other's account if a spouse passes away.
Yes.
I'm talking about when money goes from mom and dad down to the kids. So that when an inherited IRA happens with a non-spouse beneficiary, under current legislation, if you're already taking RMDs, your required minimum distributions, you must continue that path, but the entire account has to be zeroed out in 10 years.
It used to be stretched out over someone's lifetime, and that's the big change, is now it has to be within that 10-year window.
So you think about, okay, let's say mom and dad pass away in their mid to late 70s, early 80s. The kids are probably in their 50s, 60s, i.e. highest earning years. And here comes more taxable income.
Right.
So that's, again, one of the things I think is so important for us to look at. When you look at, just don't look at the numbers of the statements. What we do is we look at the tax classification of the dollars, because the IRS knows that. They know there are trillions of dollars that are going to go from one generation to the next, and they're just like, bring it on, we're going to tax
Right.
it.
Yep.
So we want to do some tax planning to prepare for that, to give more to the family
Yes.
and less to the IRS.
And I think what I love that we're having this conversation is because so many people in our industry who are focused on investment management in those bigger firms, they're literally told that they can't have these types of tax planning conversations with their clients, right?
It's exactly right. You know, it's like if you think of the analogy of our healthcare system, right? Let's say you go to your doctor, your primary care physician, they do the labs, and all of a sudden the doctor gets back with you and says, you know what, John, I don't like what I saw here. I'm going to refer you to a specialist, right? So now all of a sudden you're going to go see another doctor, but this doctor focuses on one part of your body. Think in terms of that with the financial industry that we live in. Every retirement income planner is a financial advisor, but not every financial advisor is a retirement income planner. So Kristen, to your point, the vehicles that we used and the personnel that we may have worked with building our wealth may not be the right vehicles and the right personnel when it comes time to distribute our wealth. Sometimes that's a hard change.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I'm certainly not telling people you have to make that change, but you at least have to understand where that advisor resides and where their expertise lies, so that you're not caught off guard with a surprise or regret in retirement.
Right. Well, I know a lot of what you do is you offer second opinions to people, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers, you might already be working with another financial advisor, but if they're not having these kinds of conversations with you, it's time to get a second opinion. So what would you say to someone if they're like, you know what, I really would like to come in, sit down, and get a second opinion from you?
And I think that's a good thing to do, because I always like to remind people, you can't get a second opinion from the person who gave you the first one, okay? And another question to think about, if somebody's kind of on that fence, right? We're not here to try to sever relationships. That's not our purpose. But you have to think about this question here. Do you have enough confidence in your current advisor to get a second opinion? Just let that sink in for a second. As you're making this transition from that accumulation phase to the distribution phase, is that current advisor the right professional that can walk you through that journey? So I think the second opinion is a very, very valuable tool, because at the end of the day, you spent decades of your life building this wealth. This is a very, very important decision at this time of your life, how the funds get distributed in the most tax-efficient manner, taking into account market volatility, inflation, longevity, all the different risks that come with that. So therefore, we just encourage people, go get a second opinion. There's no harm in doing so, and we're happy to provide that to you.
Wonderful. Tim, thank you so much. If you would like to get your second opinion from Tim and his team, all you need to do is call that number on the bottom of your screen to claim your complimentary written financial plan, 888-992-7872. Or again, you're also welcome to scan that QR code. That will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter. The one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back to Income is the Outcome with Tim Whisler. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and today Tim and I have been having a very helpful conversation all about really what makes him and the Whisler agency different in this financial services space. You know, there's so many different financial professionals out there. I've heard this in my work as a financial educator, that often it can be hard to know who to trust, who's going to have my best interest. How do I know that I'm working with the right person? I would love to hear now, as we wrap up today's show, about the ideal kinds of folks that you work with. I know you've helped hundreds of people successfully navigate to and through their retirement. Any stories that stand out that our viewers would definitely be able to connect with?
Sure. No, and to your point, Kristen, coming to that realization of maybe we do need to raise our hand and maybe get some help. That's a hard thing to do, and I get that. Just give yourself some grace because it's uncomfortable, right? But it's okay. It's okay to have that conversation where you're going to sit down with somebody and have them ask some questions to get to know you, get to understand what the dollars are about. And one of my favorite stories is with John and Penny. John was a blue-collar guy at a local car manufacturer. I knew them from years and years ago when I served the industry as an auto and home insurance agent.
Okay.
And so I got to know them back then, and we kind of just severed ties whenever I stopped, marketing auto and home insurance.
Sure.
And they heard one of my radio ads, and John was considering retirement as he was approaching a certain age, and they reached out. And we sat down, and it was so neat to hear John and Penny say, we think we've done a good job saving dollars, but we're not sure how do we take income from it. What account should we withdraw from first, and how do we do all this? And what's the best way to approach that? So I just think that's kind of the ideal client that we're looking for. Somebody who's just, they were an expert in their field. They're getting ready to make this transition. And it's not an easy transition to make emotionally. But if we're just willing to say, look, we don't want to mess this up. We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
So therefore we want to sit down with a planner,
Yep.
go through that dialogue, that conversation, get acquainted, look at the numbers, and then start to kind of build the foundation from there. And it's a wonderful experience because I love the fact that I get to see the transition firsthand because I know where they're going to go. Done this for so many years, I get to see that.
Yeah.
And I just tell them that I'm excited to walk this journey with you because you're going to love these next coming months and years ahead of you.
Yes, for sure. And because you treat everything from that comprehensive, holistic perspective, I think it gives people a lot of confidence. One of the things I say a lot is how you make a decision in one area of your financial life can and will affect all the others. That's why you have to look at these things and how they fit together, and you provide that holistic perspective so well. I also want to highlight before we wrap today that when folks do come in and claim their complimentary written financial plan from you, they're also going to receive a copy of your book, License to Spend. Touch on that real quick.
Yes, ma'am. This was about a 2-year project in the making. It's been in the back of my mind for over a decade, and finally I was able to kind of start extrapolating all the different ideas and put it into a book. We're very excited about it. We just kind of touched on some of the topics that we'll talk about on different episodes of the show, but in the big picture, my favorite part of the book is the testimonials from clients, because I was asked to reach out to a handful of clients, ask them some specific questions, and the answers they provided was just humbling to know that they're happy with where they're at, they're happy working with us, and we'd love to share that same experience with those folks who are watching today.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited for more people to connect with you as a result of today's show, and who knows, maybe they'll end up as a testimonial in a future book.
That would be great.
Right?
Yes, indeed.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being here and for this conversation with you today, and thank you all for tuning in and joining us. We appreciate you being here. Again, to claim your complimentary written financial plan, simply call that number on the bottom of your screen, 888-992-7872. We know a lot of this might be new to you. It's not new to Tim and the team of the Whisler Agency. They are here to help guide you along the way. Be safe, be happy, be blessed. We look forward to being back with you next time here on Income is the Outcome.